Nice to be here. Nice to be out. I haven't spoken at a meetup for several years, so it's quite nice to be here. Today I am going to be talking about a little thing that I made, and it's made out of NextJS, which is based on React. And I wanted to ask in the audience if you are mostly, I'm assuming, JavaScript developers, who is using React in their day job? Okay, yeah, half, that seems about right. And who is using Next.js already to do their code? I thought there would be more, but that's good, because that means I might actually be telling you something that you wanted to know, because the reason that I picked up Next.js is that I've been using React and I really like it, and I didn't think I was going to like it because I thought JSX looked horrible, and I got a job with a React house who took me on even though I had no React experience, and I've really enjoyed the experience of learning to use that framework, and I'd heard about Next.js, and so I thought, you know, one of the things when you're particularly a front-end developer is that there's new stuff coming out all the time, and if you don't have time to pick it up, then you always feel like you're missing out slightly, or there's something cool going on over there, and like, what are all those people doing? So that's partly why I put this talk together and picked something up. Why did I make this thing? I was looking for work, and I was contacted by a recruitment consultant, and they said, you know, have you got any work you can show? And the answer is no, because if you look at my GitHub, I saw this tweet ages ago, GitHub is not my resume, it's more like a field of broken dreams. And I like this one too. GitHub is a graveyard of good intentions, because I use my GitHub account to make things that are fun for me. They're thoughts, it's like a sketchbook, it's not real code, and I have been working as a developer for 15 years, so I've written a lot of production code, but that belongs to my employers, and I'm under NDA, or it's someone else's intellectual property, and I can't just go showing that to other companies just because I want another job, because that's a contract violation. And they said, okay, we understand. I don't think they do understand, but he's like, we understand that. And so this company came back to me and they said, can you just make us something, anything? That was their brief. And I thought, that's actually really nice, because being given technical tests when you're recruiting is a massive bummer. And they're really boring, they're a time suck, nobody likes doing it. And so I thought, actually, this is quite a nice ask, that they're just like, just make a thing. And I thought, brilliant. That sounds good, what am I going to make? And I haven't made anything for a really long time, partly because I had a baby and they take a long time, and partly because one of the things that I've been doing in my spare time is I help out a friend's music event, which is a fundraiser for their charity, and I'm kind of head of decor, which is quite a grand name for the person that makes it look nice. And this is one of the things that I've been making for them as like a piece of installation art. This is my kitchen. This is me sending them a video of the thing that I've made, because I kept trying to tell them what it was and they couldn't work out what I was talking about. This is like a bank of sensors. These are capacitive sensors, so when you get near them, you touch them, something happens. And it's a bank of letters made out of LEDs, and the closer you get to the capacitive sensor, the letters change colour. And this is something that I've rigged up at home out of 100 USB ports and lots of Arduino sensors. And I'm really pleased with it, I'm really proud of it. I really like making this kind of interactive code. It's something that I'm really into, and the reason that I'm a front-end developer and a JavaScript developer is that I like user interaction coding, and I like making things happen and touching stuff and seeing it happen. So when they were like, make a thing, I was like, okay, what can I make? And can I turn this really nice idea that I had for together? Like, the idea, in case you couldn't see, is that there are 8 sensors and you can't touch them all at once. So you are going to have to do it with another person and do it together. And so the idea is that everyone comes in together, and that's the thought that I had behind this piece. So I was thinking about, like, if I'm going to make that happen on a browser and I want multiple people connecting to a browser, like, what am I going to need to do to make that happen? And I think originally, like, it said Redux on my I think originally I was thinking that I would need to send stuff into state, so when everyone connected that I would be holding the global state in state, and actually I moved away from that idea and I didn't take Redux off, so there is no Redux in this experiment that I'm going to show you. And I remembered that I'd done something before with PeerJS, which is using a web Rtc protocol. PeerJS is a JavaScript library. It sits on your client and it makes a request to a Signal server, and that way multiple browsers can all communicate to each other. And I was really excited about this because it's a really long time since I've made anything. This is the first project that I've made for myself to make a web page or something out of JavaScript code for myself for ages, and I'd forgotten what that feeling was of feeling really excited about writing websites, because sometimes work can be a drag. And I think because I got overexcited, I don't know if anybody is guilty of this, you know, you think, oh, I'm going to make myself a blog, and then you're like, whilst I'm doing that, I'm going to learn a new framework, and then you find yourself, now I've got to learn a new build system, and then you're like, and you've just waded out into this massive new tech stack that you thought would be really exciting, and you haven't written any of your blog, and you haven't written any of that application. So this is basically what I did. I was like, yeah, I'm going to learn NextJS. That sounds cool. So the thing that attracted me to NextJS is that I'd done a workshop on it a couple of years ago. Remy Sharp teaches one, and he's really into it. He really loves it, and he was bigging it up. And I was kind of attracted by the idea that it gives you everything straight out the box, like a Rails scaffold. And there is a CLI that you can download. So you npm install next, and then you install the CLI, and then you just type one line of code, build my next app, and it does everything, and it puts in your Webpack, it does your Babel config, it sets up a hot loader, it does your CSS compiling, all of that stuff is straight out the box. And I was thinking, yes, I've waited my whole front-end career for this to happen, because I have always hated require, I hated browserify, I hated like all of that config stuff, and you're just plowing through JSON. And like I was saying, every time you ever wanted to learn a new framework, you also had to learn all of their other build system, because if you Googled a problem that you were having in Angular, you would inevitably get all of the results back from Stack Overflow saying, you have to build it in Broccoli or Gulp. And if your code base doesn't look like someone else's build, it's impossible to follow their tutorial, whatever it is online. So this is what made me think like NextJS is like, this is the holy grail that I've been looking for. And that was true for about a day. I felt like the best person in the world. And it gives you all this other stuff. It gives you this isomorphic server thing, which I don't think I ever really kind of got my head around, that you can spit out stuff from your server side, so you're not building pages on the front end. It does all your routing, so you don't need like the React router, because that's all coming from your server. What it does do, which I think it looks like it's helping you to begin with, is that it is Webpack, but it hides it under the hood, and you can plug your own plugins into the next config, and it hands them off to Webpack. But what you can't do is find out what version of Webpack you are running. So as soon as I started to find other things that I wanted to plug into the basic scaffold, I just ran into Babel errors, like all of the build pack errors, anytime I wanted to add anything. And I was trying to use this other person's repo that is an Rtc project that he's built on top of NextJS, and I was trying to take his dependencies from his repo and put them in mine and kind of plug all of mine together, and it fell apart. And I spent days plowing through Babel config Webpack errors, and I couldn't debug them because I couldn't see what version of Webpack I was using, and Babel has moved on. So the whole Babel ecosystem, there were 2 versions before, like 6 or 7 and after, and you can't use the plugins if you're using the wrong Babel core. It's a nightmare, and it's not any better than it ever was. And I made this pie chart like this. Actually, maybe you can't read this. Time spent configuring my front-end framework. This green is like time actually doing something fun. Like this much of Babel config. And I'm not ragging on the people who write these libraries, because it's super complicated and I can't do it and I never have. So it's not that I hate Webpack or I resent them in any way. I'm very envious of the people who write this stuff, because I think it's really great. But I just, why does it always have to be so painful? And like years ago, I saw Christian Harmon giving a talk, and he was talking about the frustration of being a front-end developer and how there are really basic things in our industry that we haven't solved, like accessibility and writing good code and like writing efficiently so we're not reinventing the wheel. And he said, we keep running around in circles, and every year we get shinier shoes. And this is what it feels like to me, because it's like NextJS looks so good, but it's like all I've done is just put on another pair of shoes. So, shit. But one of the things I did find that did make me really happy, like because I'm using NextJS and I'm using someone else's whole separate tech stack, is that there is other CSS bundled in. So we're using a very old version of React. We're just using plain Sass that we've bundled with our own Webpack compiler. But NextJS gives you styled components straight out the hood as a component, like a build, I don't know what you'd call it, like a constant. So you're not compiling your own Sass. And this is CSS in JavaScript, which I tend to ignore those kind of industry arguments of people getting, squabbling over technology, because I found that generally in any technology choice, there are good and bad, and getting like territorial and tribal about your choices is kind of a waste of time. And it also, like, I was very against JSX because it looks horrible. It's actually a really useful solution. So being tribal about that doesn't actually really get you anywhere. So I kind of came to this with quite an open mind. The syntax is horrible. I'm using it, I like to call it world of interpolation, because you're writing like JavaScript variables in a templated string, inside a string, inside the JavaScript, inside a string of JSX. Like it's unpleasant to think about, and you can kind of move your CSS files into other places, but you're still like sucking strings into strings and then spitting out other strings. But what I did find when I was making, I'd kind of put up my set of letters as the application that I was making, but the page was looking a bit bare, and I was thinking, okay, I'll put some nice decoration in behind. And what I've got is these little circles. I've got a random number generator, and it generates a size and a shape and a color by picking a number out of 360. And I'm using HSLA, which is hue, saturation, light, luminosity, and alpha channel to make the transparency. And if you're not familiar with how HSLA works, it's like a color wheel. So the 360 is the 360 degrees of a circle. So you can pick any hue in the color wheel just by picking one number. And if you're making like if you want to generate a random color, it's loads easier to do that and use like RGB or a hex color. So if you want to do this kind of thing, HSLA is actually much more useful. And what I've done is, I don't know if you can read this code at the back. It just picks a random number, and to do the color, I'm doing like 0 to 360, and then I've also got like size and position on the screen. And then this is my background gradient with CSS, and then I'm just dropping all of these variables straight into the CSS, and it's so nice to work with. This took like an hour, and it's a really beautiful, simple idea. If you refresh the page, it just kind of spits out other colors. It was really pleasing. It was really pleasing to look at. It was really pleasing to code. It was just a really nice technical solution. So, like, I fully sold on that CSS and JS. And whilst I was building this, I just happened to be looking at Twitter one day, and I saw a guy who's written a random color splash generator out of audio samples into Canvas. And it was just such a beautiful, simple idea. And this CSS in JavaScript gives you so much power to put variable generation in to your CSS. That was that was a happy accident I came across, but just a nice kind of side effect of this project. So the last part of it that I needed to bolt it all together was the PeerJS stuff, which is, like I was saying earlier, it's a JavaScript library. It sits on your front end in your client. You need an application server because you need something that all of the clients are connecting to that's a central point. So if you've got an application server, it sends a message to your server, and the server holds all the messages and sends them back to whoever's connected. And it's got an open connection using the web Rtc API. And I based my work on a repo that I'd found by this guy, Mairead Preece, which if you want to look for his work on GitHub, it's a really nice little project. Mine is basically exactly his code. Like all the RTC stuff is basically just his, and I kind of bolted all of my React components onto the top. And I'll show you a little demo of it working on my machine. So I've got a little page. You go in, like his project is actually meant to give you like a chat room, so it sets up a new channel for you to look at. And then I've got a little kind of mouse pointer that you can drag over the letters, and they change colour when you drag over them. And that's just a really simple idea. And then if you want someone else to connect to the page, you set up a connect to the same URL, and then you've got two people. So can you see now that two letters are set up because it knows that there are two mouse pointers now? And you can also see, you might not be able to see down the bottom, it can tell you how many users are connected. So now you've got multiple users connected to the same web page. And I was thinking, brilliant, this is exactly what I wanted. And my idea was that I would put this up and the whole room, we could all play with it together. That's not going to happen, so sorry to disappoint you, because this is all working on my machine. And I went to go and test that. And I got my mobile phone out, and it wasn't working on my phone. I was like, okay, fair enough. I haven't actually put any touch events in, so it's not going to work on a mobile device. Then I got like my iPad. Then I connected another laptop, and I realized that even my other laptop couldn't connect. So there's something is not quite right here. And like this proof of concept is working. So all the PeerJS stuff and Mairead Preece's GitHub repo, that all does what it's supposed to do. But it's just not that simple. I was talking to someone in the break just now about, I've been doing this job a long time. I've been doing this for 15 years, and I was really jazzed at the start of this project. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to be really good at it, because it's the first time in my life that I actually do feel like I've got the skills to do this. There's going to be no problem at all. And then Adam approached me to talk, and I was like, yeah, I can talk about that, because I can totally do this. And it's just not as simple as I thought it was going to be. And you'd think one day that I would learn that things like code never works out to be as easy as you want. Also, whilst I was writing this talk, I came up with this. This seemed relevant. Has everyone got it? Can everyone at the back read it? Because it is a good joke. Also, if you go and look for this, search for this, there's someone further down in her replies who's dressed up as a mime type, and his T-shirt says like star human, but he's dressed like a mime, and that's worth looking. So it made me laugh a lot. So I want to read this quote out. Whilst I was trying to work out what was actually broken, I found this article as 5 mistakes developing WebRTC applications. My biggest gripe recently is people who decide in 2018 or 19 that PeerJS is what they need for their WebRTC application. So I'm reading this, I'm thinking, shit. A project with 402 lines of code, last updated in 2015. You can't use such code with WebRTC. Code older than you is stale or dead. WebRTC is still too new and too dynamic, apparently, according to this guy. Now, I think it's actually a totally reasonable thing to assume that you could use code that was written 4 years ago. But also, in my defense, the last time I used PeerJS was 4 years ago. So my son's about 4 years old now. So the last project that I genuinely used this on was a long time ago. But the other thing, in defense, if you go looking for anybody doing this stuff online, everybody is using PeerJS, unless they've moved on to like a paid service. Like this is kind of like this still industry standard, even though this guy, who is a very sensible man, is telling you not to use it. And the reason for that is like it's not the whole solution. It's not everything that you need to know to do this kind of work. So I found this really nice diagram. There are loads of really boring diagrams of stun servers on the internet, but I like this one because it's got little cute cats. They're so sweet. This is written from an article by this guy, Mairead Preece, about using kind of WebRTC and RJS. And what it's showing you is two people, two cats, trying to connect to each other, and the levels of application server that you need to be able to do this over a network. So when you have got a machine, the reason that both of my web pages could talk to each other with PeerJS is that they're on the same network address. They're on my same machine. So your network address translation, your NAT, is not necessarily like publicly available to everybody else. And if I wanted all of you in this room to be connecting to me, especially over your mobile phone device, then you've all got other kind of public-facing network addresses, and I have to be able to use something that will give that to me, and you can't necessarily do that for free. You need to pay someone. Google have got some of their own servers, but from what I could tell from the research, they don't work. So if you want to do this stuff, you need to be paying. And what you're paying for is somebody that's operating these turn servers and stun servers. So this is you and your local area network, whatever your computer is. This is your application server that you want to be sending messages over. You need to send an ICE connection that lets you find other people on the public internet. And for that, you need to be using a stun server. And if you can't pass the messaging that you've got through the stun server because whatever device you're trying to connect to doesn't have enough capability to use these things, then you're going to also need a turn server. And that's like a messaging, like a shuttling system. So you're going to need like several layers of this kind of server architecture to be able to communicate. Which is a shame, because I was hoping that we'd all be able to touch the thing that I'd made, but it turns out it's loads more complicated than that. And I also put together a little glossary of things, because it gets quite confusing if you're not used to this language. When you start kind of researching into it, it gets a bit confusing. So UDP is what we use to send anything over the internet, any network traffic we're sending by UDP. SDP is the protocol that it's using when it wants to find a public address. It needs to send some kind of session information to get the ICE. The ICE is the interactive connectivity establishment. So the ICE servers it is going to get, it's sending those communication handshakes over SDP. Stun is session traversal utilities for NATs. Your NAT is your network address translation, and it's using a stun server to send stuff over the network, over the public-facing this turn, traversal using relays around the NAT. The turn servers are the shuttling system. So if you can't communicate just with the stun, you might need to send it through the turn. And there's a lot of jargon there. I did find this really nice little website that someone set up called TestWebRTC, which is a page of connectivity information. So you can look at it on any device. And if you're trying to debug, why is this thing not talking to this other thing, then you can set it up and you run it, and it runs a series of tests, and it will tell you everything that you've got. So this was doing it on my home computer. So it's saying I've got UDP and TCP. I can do that with that device, but there's a warning over my IPv. And then also, like here, it's telling me like what's my UDP address, what's my connectivity, like all of this stuff, and there's loads of different information. And I did go wandering into Google DevTools, also have their own RTC internals, but that felt like I'd wandered into the Wild West because they hadn't even put any CSS on those pages. It's just like really confusing looking graphs and text that I didn't understand. So I was going to put that up today and show you all, and I just backed slowly away from that because I don't even understand this, so I'm not going to show that to anyone else. The thing that I did find, these guys are quite good. This is a code sample, which you might not be able to see, but you don't really need to read it. This company, Xerxes, I think they're called, they're an online service provider that provide the stun servers and the turn servers. So what you do is you set up your application server to make a secure proxied request to the Xerxes servers, and it tells you, depending on who you are and your own authentication, what your ICE servers. So it'll go and get you stun and turn servers, and you pay them a certain amount for them to give you access to use their online service, and then that's the network traversal. So there's another layer of this that you need to put on top. But the problem with some of this code, there's a lot of typos in their documentation, so they've just added extra brackets in and not debugged that, so that's kind of fun to use. But also, this is written in jQuery. This feels like it's really ancient and out of date, because they've written this. This is to connect into your PeerJS, which is a client-side library. That's all written in jQuery. And then when you're creating your peer, you just put in this kind of config that you've got back from them to go and get their ICE servers. they've got loads of documentation explaining how to do it on Node.js, how to write the proxy server, and they've written all of that out for you. But it got really complicated at this point, and part of the reason that I didn't manage to get this demo finished is that I wrote my own SSL, which I've never done before, and I was deploying this onto Heroku, and I don't know if anyone's familiar with Heroku. Heroku, I think, are champions, and I've been using them for years and years now. They're one of the only things on the internet that consistently works well and gets better every time you touch it. And the only other people that I can think of that I think are this good are PayPal, because their service is continually improving. Heroku have got amazing documentation. It is really crystal clear. It will step you through everything you need to do. And I'd never written my own SSL certificate. And Heroku offer a service not only to create it and walk you through creating your own SSL, they've got a CLI command that lets you assign your SSL certificates to their they do free domains. If you want to use SSL, you've got to pay for one of their hobby domains. They call them dynos. But you can pay for that for like £7 to have a secure web application that's using SSL, using your own self-signed certificate. And to use the Xerxes system, you need to be running through the secure ports, and you need to be using SSL to put up their proxy server. But because right at the beginning of this project, I had decided I was going to use NextJS. I'm using this weird hybrid isomorphic server, and all of my client-side code is being served from an application server. And when I tried to plug in the code samples from Xerxes that have a proxy server and an application server that does the PeerJS messaging, I tried to smush these together, and I couldn't deploy it because it was throwing Babel config plugin errors, and it was the next build was trying to compile NPM dependencies for server dependencies in the client Next.js build, and the whole thing fell apart when I tried to deploy it on Heroku, which is super disappointing. And I think if I was a server developer and I understood how to debug any of that, that would be useful. If I really understood anything about what the Next.js isomorphic thing was doing for me, I might have done a better job of this, but I'm a JavaScript front-end developer, and so I realized that I've just I've written here be dragons. I've waded out into something that I'm massively over my head with, and it's not impossible at all. I think if you stripped it all back and then just used the Xerxes templates to write your own, if I just done it all in a straight Express application server, then I probably would have had something running, and instead I tried to plug it into this Next.js stuff, and it didn't work. So that's a shame. But I think as a proof of concept, it's actually a really brilliant idea. And I think that these are working technologies. And although the man from the article, whose name I don't know and I probably should have learned, is saying PeerJS is a terrible solution and don't use it, I actually do think it is a working solution. And Xerxes have examples on their code, telling you explicitly how to use PeerJS. So they're selling that product, and they obviously support it as a framework choice. So I've put some bibliography things from all of the articles that I was using to learn about this. So if you are interested in knowing more, my slides will be up on my GitHub repo, and you can come and dig through it and find it. Finally, what did I learn? So I did all of this for a job application, and I didn't get the job. And the reason I didn't get the job is that I'd sent my code over to them after about 3 or 4 days, because I think anyone that asks you to spend longer than 3 or 4 days of your own evenings and weekends is asking way too much. And they knocked me back because I hadn't put any of my CSS. I'd left it all in line. I was using var and let because I was just copying stuff out of whatever. And they basically knocked me back. They didn't even give me a face-to-face interview because my code wasn't tight enough. And I would urge any of you who are hiring at the moment, and if you have intention to hire, please do not hire people on the basis of how tidy they write their sample code or how tidy their GitHub is. In fact, don't even look at their GitHub. Have a conversation with them. Because what you want to know is this person, do they have creative ideas about solving problems? Are they an interesting human being? Can they communicate effectively about why they use technology choices? And actually what their code looks like is totally irrelevant. What language they use is totally irrelevant. So don't hire people on the basis of their codes, and they haven't put their semicolons in. I don't put my semicolons in. I am a nightmare. But I have a linter to do that. Nobody does that themselves. Like, it's absurd to look at this project. So I sound bitter. I'm not bitter, but I want our industry to do better. So if you are hiring, please don't hire like that. You know, think outside the box and think about hiring people who don't do it exactly the way you do, and then ask why, right? Okay, that's what we want to do. So on a lighter note, I'm looking for developers because I am really into creative coding, and I've heard about this thing called Chaos Camp, which is like a hackers camp in Germany, and you can rock up with your own camp, a bit like Burning Man, and set up your own things. And if anybody is into making things of any kind, like it could be code, could be browsers based, it could be, you know, physical stuff, I would really like to meet other developers who are into this kind of coding, because I want to get a gang together and make a thing. And I'm also looking for the music event that I was talking about earlier. I'm the head of decor, and it's kind of my job to meet other artists who make visual things. Like, we have visuals behind the music. We also make installation art. And if you're into that kind of thing, or if you just want to come along and find out what that's about, and we're always looking for other people to come and join us do that as well. And thank you for coming. You can get me on Twitter. I spend a lot of time here, and my slides are going to be up on my GitHub repo, which is just my name, Mairead. Thanks for coming.